Hey, Michelle, how are you doing?
Very well, Aaron. Thanks for taking the time to speak to me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now, where are you from?
I'm in Dallas.
And that's where you live now?
Yep.
How did you become a tech expert?
You know, I started on YouTube and did it for years and loved it as a tech journalist. And then from there, I thought, yeah, I love being on camera. And I love talking about tech. So I started doing it for cool brands.
Now, where did you go to school and get your training?
I did not. I actually learned it all on my own.
Oh, even better.
Yeah, on the fly. The school of on the fly.
So tell me about PhoneDog.
So PhoneDog, and they're still around. I was with them for 5 years. They have, as of right now, about 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. When I was there, they had about 400,000. So we had a YouTube channel, and we were a tech site as well, and operated both together. And so I was a tech journalist for years for them, and I was their primary on-camera face as well.
Now, where can people see you now?
I'm all over the place. I work with HSN, doing some as a tech expert. I work with Declutter, so there's those two things going on. I do some work with Studio 61 with CNET as well.
Now, how long is an electronic device considered new?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd say it depends on if it's a tech geek or not. I'm just kidding. I would say, generally speaking, I mean, from a new perspective, it's a couple of months just because the cycle's so fast in tech now. I mean, every couple of months there's a new device coming out. And traditionally, you know, you have the two launch periods for smartphones. You have March and September-ish, spring and fall. And around those is when everything comes out. But occasionally you'll get a device every couple of months that just continues to push the boundaries. So usually it's like 3 months.
Now, why does technology nowadays seem to last such a shorter time than it did before? Here's an example. I still have a TV from 20 years ago, but new flat screens seem to only last about 5 years.
I think if I had to put something on it, I would say that it's just the way that the industry is evolving. I mean, we're seeing specs change and evolve and change at a faster rate than what we saw 20 years ago. So you're seeing HD getting even more high quality. You're seeing 4K in the case of TVs. With phones, you're seeing faster processors and high resolution displays and better cameras, and all this stuff's happening, whereas before, you know, it was every year or 2 years. It's happening every 2 or 3 months now with each device iteration.
Now, when is the right time to buy a new device?
That's a great question. So back to those kind of time frames of, you know, March and September, I always tell people use those as your guideposts, and then if you're looking to sell your device to get a new device, think about selling in the spring in January, February, and then in the fall, July and August for September.
What's so special about the iPhone 8?
Oh, that's an even better question. So Apple obviously has the event next week on September 12th, and we know that's happening. Based on historical precedents, we're pretty sure that the iPhone 8 is going to come out. And the rumor mill's crazy right now, so take all of this with a grain of salt. But what we think we're going to see is an edge-to-edge display, so less bezels, about the same size, but a bigger screen, a dual camera on the back, and then also that Touch ID where you use your fingerprint to unlock your device. That may either move to the back of the device or maybe replaced completely with iris scanners and facial recognition. So a little bit of a different way to log in. But my biggest concern with the iPhone 8 is the price point. One of the rumors are all pointing at it being $1,000 full retail. So the price points are going up, and this is kind of that time to start thinking, how many devices do I have in my house? How many can I sell? And that's why a service like Declutter is so great, is you can sell those and get payment next day in cash.
Now, why are iPhones thought to depreciate at a slower rate than other phones?
I would say it's because in terms of iPhone, you have one release a year, you have one iOS device a year, whereas with Android, you have multiple releases a year. You have Samsung, LG, HTC, multiple competitors in the Android space that are constantly iterating and innovating on each other, not to mention Android in general, versus the iPhone. So you see a little bit of less of a depreciation on the iPhone side. I mean, on Declutter, for example, the iPhone 7 is $451, up to $451, whereas the Galaxy S7 Edge, which is exactly the same age, roughly the same age as the iPhone 7, is $192. So you can see the difference in depreciation, both good values, but again, there's definitely a price difference between those two.
What are some things people should consider when buying a smartphone?
It depends on your use case. I mean, a lot of people, I hear battery quite often. That's one that's kind of come back into the spotlight because with bigger screens, batteries tend to be a little bit worse in terms of consumption, both because of the size and because of the type of screen, high resolution HD. So battery is a big one. Screen size is actually a big one for a lot of people now. They want to have more screen real estate as opposed to less. And then just processing power, making sure that it's something that works on a day-to-day basis and is fast for them and doesn't slow down 3 or 4 or 5 months later, so they don't have to worry about, switching devices or worrying too much about that.
What are some examples of unused or obsolete technology that people have in their homes?
Oh, I would say TVs are still there. I mean, people upgrade TVs on a regular basis, but to your point, I mean, you have a TV from years ago that you're comfortable with, which is perfectly fine. Phones in some cases are a big one. I mean, I see people all the time that are still using flip phones or older iPhones, iPhone 4s, 4Ss, so that's one as well. Tech is one of those things where, you know, it's much like anything else. There are iterative improvements as you go on, and it's either up to you as to whether you want to upgrade to that or not. If it works for you, you got email, you got your text messaging, and that's all you need. Perhaps your current device is fine. If you do want to upgrade, you've got more to love in the current devices.
Now, how do you know if your items are worth anything?
That's where declutter.com comes in. So you can go onto their website. It's declutter.com without the second E. And they have an app as well in the App Store, on the Apple App Store and on Google Play for Android. And you can actually type it in. So in the case of iPhone 7, for example, type it in. You'll see up to $451. And from there, they'll send you a prepaid UPS shipping label, or you can print it out. It's paid for by them, and they pay you next day. So they're not giving you a store credit. They're not giving you any sort of debit card or something that you have to spend with them. They're actually giving you cash. So you can put it towards the iPhone 8 or the next Android phone or groceries or whatever you want to put it towards. But on their website, we'll list exactly how much everything's worth.
What are some new trends in technology we should be aware of?
VR is a big one right now, and then smartphones. I mean, I would say they continue to push the envelope with bezel-less displays. I mean, there's still cool stuff going on in the smartphone industry, even though most smartphones sort of look alike right now. We're seeing some changes in processing power and screen size, but then VR is a big one as well, and augmented reality.
So what is VR for people who don't know what that is?
Virtual reality. So there are a couple of different options. There's Samsung makes one, for example, HTC makes one, and you can either get it for your phone or you can get what's called room scale VR, which is a little bit techy. You set up a room in your house and you can use it as a VR room. So this is something that's kind of just coming into play, and they're using it for a bunch of different things. They're using it for medical purposes. For example, I've seen articles where they'll map out the brain and they put on a VR headset and they can actually see what it looks like without having to obviously do surgery. So there's practical use cases of perhaps there's somebody that's deployed overseas and you want to be able to see them. You've got those abilities to do that without having to video call on your phone or it just be a regular voice call. So it's cool to see. It's still very much in its infancy, but it's cool to see where it's going to go in 3 or 5 years.
Where can people learn more about you?
I'm on Twitter at Aaron C. Baker. That's probably the best way. I tweet quite a bit. And I'm on Facebook at facebook.com/hi Aaron Baker.
When you're not doing tech, what do you like to do for fun?
I love traveling. I love traveling and running. My wife would probably tell you I run way too much. I try to run 6 days a week, but I'm also a big aviation geek. So I can point up at the sky and tell you the plane and tell you the type of plane. So those are probably my two favorite. I like to cook too, occasionally, mostly on the grill. So I like to cook steaks.
Now, when does technology roll out at different times throughout the year, or is back to school time traditional time where new items are launched?
From a smartphone perspective, it's generally kind of in those two time frames. I mean, the industry's kind of consolidated around that spring time frame and that fall time frame. You'll occasionally see a device launch in like June or July, but for the most part, the majority of smartphone launches are around that time frame.
Do you have a favorite device that you'd like to tell people about?
I love phones so much. There's so many. There's some great devices out there. It just all depends on what you like using. For me, I'm a big fan of the HTC U11. That's a great device. Galaxy Note 8 is also a great device. So it just depends on and then of course, potentially the iPhone 8 could be a great device. So it just depends. I always joke, it's kind of like Ford and Chevrolet, if you will, in the car industry. It depends on what works well for you and what you love and what you're loyal to.
That sounds good. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
That's it for me. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Hope you have a great day. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.